The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma. On December 14th, in a vote where Mikhail Ghavelashvili ran unopposed, he emerged victorious. According to the results announced by the Central Election Commission, Ghavelashvili received 224 votes, while one ballot was declared invalid. He needed at least 200 votes to secure the win. The election was held under a new indirect voting system, marking the first time in the country's history that the president was elected for a 5-year term by an electoral committee. The voting took place in the parliament building starting 9 a.m. and concluding at 2 p.m. Out of the 300 members of the committee, 211 represented the Georgian Dream Party. Congratulations to the Georgian Dream and Mikhail Ghavelashvili on securing an additional 13 votes. The one-party parliament of Georgian Dream has approved the 2025 budget. Government expenditures for the next years are planned at 27.9 billion Georgian lari, an increase of 895 million Georgian lari compared to the previous budget draft, primarily due to increased funding for certain ministries. The largest allocation from the budget, 8.8 billion Georgian lari, will once again go to the Ministry of Health, which is 120 million Georgian lari higher than the previous budget proposal. In the third quarter of 2024, Georgia received a total of $198 million in foreign direct investment, which is 55% less compared to the same period last year. Over the first 9 months of 2024, total FDI amounted 966 million, representing a 40% annual decrease. BMG requested data from Geostat on which companies received the largest investments. According to Geostat, the top 10 largest investors have been operating in Georgia for several years. The list includes only one new company, Tbilisi Dry Port, which is engaged in building a logistics center near Tbilisi. From 2025, the excise tax rates on tobacco products in the country will increase. This includes a rise in the excise tax on a pack of cigarettes by 20 tetri, bringing it to 1.9 Georgian lari. Additionally, the excise tax on heated tobacco products is planned to increase by 15 tetri, reaching 1.85 Georgian lari. According to the explanatory note prepared by the authors of the draft law, the increase in excise taxes is expected to generate an additional 77 million Georgian lari in revenue from cigarette excise taxes in the 2025 budget and an additional 5.5 million Georgian lari from the heated tobacco excise taxes. This amounts to a total increase of 83.5 million Georgian lari in tax revenues. Starting in 2025, the tax rate for online gambling companies will increase, as outlined in a draft law registered by Georgian Dream MPs. According to the document, companies holding licenses to operate online gambling will see their profit tax rise from the current 15% to 20%. According to the explanatory note accompanying the bill, the change is expected to bring an additional 115 million Georgian lari into the budget. The Finance and Budget Committee of the one-party parliament Georgia has supported an initiative proposed by the Ministry of Finance which largely abolishes the tax benefit previously available to small entrepreneurs in the construction sector. The benefit in question allowed small entrepreneurs to be taxed at only 1%. The issue concerns the status of small entrepreneurs in the construction sector. As explained by the Ministry of Finance, this status is granted to workers employed by companies not under employment contracts but through service provision agreements. These workers provide services companies and are taxed at 1% instead of 20%. A loan agreement worth 250 million has been signed between Georgia and the European Investment Bank (EIB) for the construction of motorways connecting Georgia with the borders of Azerbaijan and Armenia. An initial agreement on this matter was signed back in 2020. However, the ratification process is currently underway in Parliament. According to the financial agreement, Georgia will receive the €250 million loan for a term of no more than 30 years, including a 7-year grace period. The financial resource will be allocated for the construction and supervision of the Rustavi-Algeti, Algeti-Redbridge, Algeti-Arafo and Arafo-Sadakhlo motorways. Funding for these roads has already been included in the draft state budget for 2025, with a planned allocation of 510 million Georgian lari for the routes toward Azerbaijan and 300 million Georgian lari for the routes toward Armenia.
This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Kvanchilashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up business and economics week for you. Fitch Ratings has revised the outlook on Georgia's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating IDR to negative from stable and affirmed the IDR at BB. The revision of the outlook reflects the following key rating drivers and their relative weights. Among high rates are sharply increased political risk. Fitch views political and societal polarization to have notably increased following the disputed parliamentary elections in October, in which the Georgian Dream Party retained power with 89 out of 120 seats. The opposition and most Western countries have thus far refused to formally acknowledge the results, citing malpractices, and the opposition has pledged to boycott parliament. Changes to the system of presidential elections due on 14 December are also said to be controversial, with the incumbent preemptively refusing to vacate office in the event of defeat. In Fitch's view, political risks are likely to remain very high, as manifested through large protests and legal challenges. A protracted political crisis could undermine the institutional framework and affect investor and domestic confidence, exerting pressure on external liquidity and the exchange rate. Combined with weakened trust in public institutions, this will likely negatively affect Georgia's governance indicator, a long-standing strength relative to peers. Relations with external parties. Following the elections, the Georgian government has announced a postponement of its EU accession dialogue until at least 2028, which has further galvanized protests, given an estimated 85% of the population favors EU membership and the government is constitutionally obliged to seek it. If unrest escalates, relations with key Western countries could be further strained, potentially leading to lower foreign direct investment, FDI inflows, or multilateral disbursement. Risks to policy framework. Political tensions may also delay or complicate reforms, such as boosting the independence of the National Bank of Georgia through legislation or reforming state-owned enterprises. Fitch does not expect the current precautionary IMF program, suspended since third quarter of 23, to be restored, weakening the capacity of Georgia's small, open and dollarized economy to respond to external shocks effectively. Weaker international reserve cover. International reserves fell 13% month on month. That is USD 627.5 million to USD 4.1 billion in October, equivalent to just 2.1 months of current account payments. CXP, current BB median 4.7 months, and the lowest level since the first quarter of 2021. The large drop was driven by the NBG's USD 591 million FX sales in the run-up to the elections, likely to preempt large volatility in the lari exchange rate pre-elections and increased FX demand from corporates, mainly through purchases of currency forwards. Reserves have since marginally risen to $4.12 billion as of end November. Policy response. The NBG has since affirmed its commitment to a floating exchange rate and pledged to accumulate FX reserves. The NBG's acting governor has stated that it purchased 124.5 million USD in November, but in Fitch's view, future sales cannot be ruled out. Effective mid-December, the NBG will increase the FX minimum reserve requirements for banks by 5 percentage points, which will likely boost FX reserves. Fitch expects international reserves to remain flat at around 2.3 months of CXP over 2025 to 2026, given continued large current account deficits relative to rating peers and a weaker outlook for FDI. Among medium rates are weak external finances. Georgia's large structural CAD is a consistent credit weakness and is set to continue. The CAD averaged 5.9% of GDP in the first half of 2024, with Fitch projecting 5.2% for the full year and an average of 5.5% in 2025 to 2026. Tourism sector performance revenue growth of 5.2% year-on-year in the first half of 2024, and merchandise export growth 7.4% year-over-year in January to October are the key drivers. Fitch observes a large increase in the trend of re-exports, which accounted for 57% of all goods exports in January-October, primarily of motor cars, mostly to other countries in the region, emphasizing Georgia's continuing role as a transit country for trade with Russia. Fitch expects that FDI will likely not fully cover sustained large CADs over the forecast horizon, given a deterioration in relations with major Western countries. The largest source of FDI for Georgia, inbound FDI, contracted by 34% year-over-year in the first half of 2024, although it is clear if this is in direct response to the worsening of relations between Georgia and the EU and US since the start of the year. Georgia's net external debt is projected at 44.1% of GDP for 2024 and will remain about 3 times the peer median through to 2026. Georgia's BB IDRs also reflect the following rating drivers: solid economic growth. Real GDP growth was robust at 10% in January-October 2024. 2023 it was 7.8%, driven by strong services sector performance, notably tourism and information and communications technology, ICT, construction, as well as strong exports. The relatively well-diversified economy is likely to remain resilient to the ongoing political crisis. In Fitch's view, there has been a lasting boost to potential growth, currently estimated at 4.5% from the large-scale influx of Russian and Ukrainian immigrants since 2022, which has led to value and capacity addition in the construction and ICT sectors. Fitch expects growth of 8.7% in 2024, moderating to 5.3% in 2025 and 5% in 2026. Inflation and monetary policy. Inflation averaged 1% in January-November 2024, well below the 3% target, mainly owing to weak domestic price growth. Fitch expects inflation to increase to 2.1% on average in 2025 and 2.3% in 2026, with sharper lari depreciation providing an upside risk. The NBG has cut rates by cumulative 150 BP in 2024 to 8%, and further cuts are unlikely. Monetary policy is constrained by relatively high levels of dollarization. According to Fitch Ratings, corporate deposit dollarization increased by 2.6 percentage point month on month in October to 37.5%, likely indicating increasing expectations of lari weakening in the run-up to elections. Loan dollarization has remained largely stable at 43.3% as of end October. Low fiscal deficits. Georgia has a strong record of overperforming budget targets owing to stronger than projected revenue collection. Fitch expects the general government deficit to narrow from 2.7% of GDP in 2024 to 2.5% in 2025 and 2.3% in 2026, well below the 3% deficit ceiling. Moderate debt levels, gross general government debt, GGD, stood at 38.1% of GDP as of May 2024, current BB median 55.2%. Fitch projects this to average 38.7% in 2025 to 2026, well below the 60% debt ceiling, with exchange rate depreciation a key risk to debt dynamics. 90% of external debt is owed to bilateral and multilateral creditors on concessional terms. Fitch expects a USD 500 million Eurobond to be refinanced on the international markets upon maturity in April 2026. Georgia has an ESG relevance score of 5 for political stability, rights, and 5+ for the rule of law, institutional and regulatory quality, and control of corruption, respectively. These scores reflect the high weight that the World Bank governance indicators, WBGI, have in Fitch's proprietary sovereign rating model, SRM. Georgia has a medium WBGI ranking at the 61st percentile, reflecting moderate institutional capacity, established rule of law, a moderate level of corruption, and political risks associated with the unresolved conflict with Russia. Factors that could individually or collectively lead to negative rating action upgrades, structural substantial worsening of domestic political or geopolitical risks with adverse consequences for economic performance, governance, or access to external finances. External finances continued sustained decline in international reserves, for example, due to large capital outflows or a sharp drop in FDI, and macro, a weakening of Georgia's policy framework that creates risks for macroeconomic and financial stability. Factors that could individually or collectively lead to positive rating action upgrade include structural, a sustained reduction in domestic political risks resulting in greater confidence in the policy framework; external finances, a substantial reduction in external vulnerability, for example, from a recovery in international reserves and/or narrowing in the current account deficit. According to the European Business Association, European businesses have questions over the future investment opportunities in Georgia. Some of them have actively been mentioning corruption, more so systemic corruption, as the main challenge. Here are some insights from the interview. Mr. Brockwold, thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking our questions. My first question: what do European businesses, European investors, generally the West, see with this commencement of the first session of the Parliament of Georgia, and probably we will have a new government as well?
I would put it a little bit broader. I'm here already so long, and I'm never going to forget last year in December that the candidate status to Georgia arrived, and Georgia got a very positive image within Europe, because I see the European news. They had a very positive, and the day that it was announced that we got the European candidate status, we got immediately calls. People wanted to come to Georgia to invest money in Georgia. They needed staff for a European company, so the European business was very much activated. However, now, of course, the image of Georgia is not on a good stance. Everybody knows politics is never good for business, I always tell. So I've been in Georgia, I'm Georgian, I've already been 3 elections I saw. Although I'm happy to vote in elections, it's horrible for me to see elections for the business sector, because we are always a bit the victim of these kind of things. And this time the political situation really overruled all the positive business investments we had from Europe. It was a bad narrative, and this affects really the business, the European businesses who wants to operate, for example, in Georgia. So I saw a lot of companies leaving, actually, with my own eyes.
Let's come back to that point a little bit later. You yourself are a European businessman in Georgia for many, many years, and you also have these connections with European businesses. What type of a businessman, what type of an investor is a European investor? Do these values that we are speaking about share the values of democracy, of doing business with clear rules of the game. Are these really important for these people, or is it, well, there might be a little bit of autocracy in the country, but still the inflow of investments will be the same, the economy will still thrive, and so on?
Absolutely, the most important is European standards, European values. Because a company, European company, if they want to operate in a country like Georgia, they need to make sure that this branch in Georgia has the same standards, because now we're living in a world, social media, it's all there, and how can for example, a Belgian company with a branch in Georgia suddenly gets a bad name because there is no European standards in it? No, they have to be in all the line on the same. So this is extremely important for them, for European businesses here, that they can have the same standards, the same values, and that they can promote also then that they are in Georgia.
You mentioned that businesses and investors are leaving Georgia. This is something that, for example, Fitch Ratings doesn't see at this point. What is the reason for that? And do you think this, the economic situation, the business situation, has this leg, a little bit leg for what the political uncertainty tells them to do in the end?
I have to be careful what I'm answering now, because every business has a different perspective. Let me start, maybe separate them. First of all, let's speak about European businesses that are selling products on the Georgian market also, and from here on they want to expand to other markets. That's an important factor. These companies, we always have the problem in Georgia, there's a small market. So the big companies, we don't have the chance here to have the biggest companies in the world operate here, because there's no market yet. Although these smaller companies, European companies, the SME companies, they can come here to Georgia and they can sell their products, but also then go to other countries. This has stopped already for the last 2 years, gradually. Why? Because of the war. Because of the war in Ukraine. What happened? The European Union added sanctions for the Russian products on the European market. For me, as a person, of course, and as the representative of the European businesses, it was very unfortunate that there was no blockage from Russia to Georgia, because Russia, of course, if they all have this produced there, they dumped it on the Georgian market under the price, then you can produce it. So for that one, from the day to the other day, all the European companies suddenly got out of business, because how can I now go to a Georgian company and says, look, my products, buy my products, European quality products, if my price is more than double the size of the Russian products getting dumped here. So there had to be some buffers there. Yes, Georgia has a DCFTA, a free trade agreement with Europe, but it has even a more free trade agreement with Russia, which is very bad for that one. So that's the first thing, which due to the war, it gave a very bad thing for European businesses. I believe at some point, yes, we are living in Georgia. We all see suddenly we took advantage of the war a bit in Georgia because of the Russian influx here also, cheaper products maybe. But on a future, this is not sustainable. Because, first of all, it's your European products, which are not anymore on the Georgian market. We all see it. The European products are leaving. The next point is that there is no use also to produce anything in Georgia anymore. Why? Because why you should start now invest in a factory if you know already that you cannot have the price that the goods are dumped here. So that's the second part happening. And the third part, which I also think has something to do with that, is the whole outflux of the young people. Let's also put a point on that one. Why young people are leaving? Because there is no production in Georgia. And due to the whole less regulations with Russia, all the products dumped, there's no reason to have a production here. So that's one big factor. You have, of course, the other point, which I see more companies are still here. For example, IT companies from the Baltic countries. There's a big problem also in skills, in labor in the European Union, and Georgia is perfectly positioned in that. Before you had Romania, Bulgaria, you have Poland. These were the countries when all the labor force went to Western Europe. That's over. These countries are really so well developed already, are even leading over Western European countries. So they need to find the labor force for somewhere else. And now the logical step was Georgia. Why Georgia? It's close to the borders with the European Union, but also, with all due respect, we all speak perfectly English. We have knowledgeable people here in Georgia, people who want to work. So that's what's happening, that they are now also leaving the country. People say, yes, this is bad, but yes, okay, there is no production here. Where are we going to keep them here? There is no production going on. So we really need to invest in production, local production, on that part. There are still some European companies which are proudly a member of the European Business Association, which are operating here, as I say, mostly IT companies. But I see also for them the second place, the European standards, European values, the image of Georgia, let's make it like this, is not making it better for them to further invest here, which is, I think, a big problem.
What do statistics tell about Georgian market and Georgia's philosophy of doing business? And we've seen that a share of the EU market in Georgia is down to 10-year minimum. And we also see, which is even more important for that image that you have accentuated, is that the main markets for Georgia today are Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. The counter argument towards that is, whatever doubts there might be why these specifically two markets have become the biggest markets for Georgia, not everything is sanctioned. So why is it a problem for Georgia to capitalize on the geopolitical situation that is there? How does that affect Georgia's image for the European and for more sustainable businesses?
You mentioned it correct, sustainable business. So this is not sustainable. Kyrgyzstan, even China, even Russia, this is not sustainable. The European Union has been here for so much supporting Georgia to implement European standards, and this is also helping the Georgian community here also. All these other countries, we know it's worldwide proven fact that this is not sustainable. European Union accession to be a part of the European Union, to have this image, a candidate status, this was a real goal, and the people in Georgia also know that this was actually the only route that Georgia could take. Now, yes, I understand, let's say the top 2% in Georgia is having it good, because these products go in cheap, although like Chinese products, they break every time. They come in cheap. European standards, you need to do some effort. You need to do some investment for this one, which I perfectly understand is very difficult. So, but this top 2% is now for the moment okay. But the country is not helping. So, and every year, if we don't make some kind of a quick reversal of everything, every year I see Georgia will go into the decline. We really need to focus and harness that these European businesses here, that they can stay here also. I heard a lot of comments also, the DCFTA, that there's not enough trade with DCFTA. And I agree with that also, and people can get upset with that, but this is something you don't do in 1 year time. This is a structure you do for all years, and what we're now doing in the last year is we're losing all the investment we did in all these years.
That's a sad picture. So you don't see the Eurasian market, so to say, as the substitute of the European market, because sometimes it seems, even in the rhetoric of the government, that they kind of think that this could be substituted for Georgia.
Absolutely not. They cannot substitute this Eurasian market. I would even say more. By Georgia having part of the European Union, these European standards, European values, they actually had a leverage on this Eurasian, because they could do, for example, Middle Corridor, the transit routes, they could work all on these kind of things. as Georgia as the one with the European values, with the European working on infrastructural projects, all this kind of thing, and be a hub for Europe to these kind of countries. Now it's like whole vice versa, that is Eurasian, that we are getting dependent. I don't think any Georgian wants to be dependent from another country. We need to make sure that we show that we are having these kind of standards, these leverages, that we as Georgians can grow our economy, which is absolutely necessary. I didn't mention it yet, but we as the European Business Association, we have actually not published yet, but we have created the next EU Business Climate Report. It is ready in draft and it will be presented on the 10th of December.
Yes, I had it on
at the Business Forum. I can give you already some tips. Of course, political instability is the top problem again. But the lack of skills, the scale of the markets, it's all connected with each other. And personally, I see only one solution is having the candidate status from the European Union, to be Georgia, to get a future membership at the European Union. That is how we can solve the economy in Georgia. I don't see any other way.
What type of signal is for the European investors? For example, the Prime Minister stating that, or the chair of the parliament, it was that we haven't invited ambassadors to the first sitting of the parliament.
Yeah, well, I have to be answered is very strict. So first of all, I'm not a politician.
Of course, I know. I'm not trying to. No, yeah. I'm not trying to drag you in that discussion.
My personal opinion, which I could speak this, and I truly tell this is my personal opinion, and my profession, I'm a manager. I would like to see Georgia as managed. It should be a managed people. The economy is going, as I mentioned now, in the worst situation. We need managers who organize, who work together. Again, it's a personal opinion now. We have now all this the protest actions, we have the government through parliament goes without. People will need to stop placing their red lines like this. People will need to start communicating with each other in the benefit of the economy, because the economy is hurting, and if we're going to keep on like this, we're going further and further away. We need now people to manage, to make sure to find solutions, and I'm sorry, I have no idea how, but to find solutions to make sure that we can get the economy on track, that we can get back the positiveness. First, I would even answer about the foreign agents law. This is now for a year we were discussing about this. It hampers the business environment. It hampers the economy. Me as a person, I am not an agent of foreign influence. Even worse, I am an agent of Georgia, because I'm helping the Georgian economy to succeed. So let's please be honest on this thing, and let's cancel this law. That's a first step that we need to do. The implementation of the 9 points from the European Union was never anything to do with politics. It has to do with the economy. It has to do to create a better economy for the people, give more employment opportunities, and make the people have more not standards, but also more money in their pocket at the end of the day. If we have a good economy, it's for the whole population of Georgia good. This is important.
So you are saying that this low inflation, high economic growth, which is let's say directly helping the government in the light of this protests even and everything, is not sustainable if this political uncertainty stays there. And Fitch Ratings told us that their outlook and their projections are that this will have a lasting effect rather than what they anticipated at first.
I'm also not an economist, so on that part also, I was in a meeting with World Bank, with other people, speaking about the economy doing good. We were in a round table. I was so surprised, because for me specific, I'm working on the European part, European investors and Georgian companies exporting to the European Union. It is dramatic for us. So, okay, good you see the progresses, the GDP, the ideas they have. I have a serious doubt about it, that this is sustainable. This is a very short term that we'll have, and it will be even worse for Georgia afterwards, disasters. You need to have partners, you need to have trading partners. We are in the whole geopolitical situation, nobody knows what's going to happen. Everything has changed in 1 year time. Georgia needs to be there. Georgia does not have time to be now with this local politics busy. Georgia needs to have now, as I told, a good manager in place, good cooperations between all parts of the society. Civil society also, very important, needs to work together to make sure, hey, we're ready to take the next step and grow the economy. That should be the idea from everybody for the moment.
What are some of the challenges personally for you as a businessman in Georgia doing business in this situation?
As I mentioned, so practically, the first one was an important one, products. I'm bringing here also quality products, Belgian products on the market. I didn't sell for the last 2 years, and it's not that I really, that's now a personal problem, I don't sell the products. No, it means that the market is not ready for this. So again, the cheaper products are coming here, which are less quality, so the quality standards, the standards go down, which I see as a real issue. What else I would say from me as personally, I wouldn't know, I would not go personally, I would see my businesses. The European business, we have more than 100 companies now who are connected to us. What I see every day is frustration. I hear that people, I'm not telling that they're leaving the country, there are a few who left the country, I don't want to use them now. But I want to see the people who are very dissatisfied with what is going on here, that they don't see economic progress, and at least that they say, we're not going to invest anymore in the next 10 years in Georgia. So the lasting effect is this is going to rumble now, and we are already lost a few, but it's going to get much worse if we don't change. We have an opportunity. We still have an opportunity to change, to make it better, to have communicating with each other more better, and again to put a priority in the economy again, to put the priority in the business, support the business, and especially the SME, the smaller businesses. I would mention also one thing that I have to mention now that you asked this question. What I also see is legislation. Because of what happened now in the last year, there is no progress in the legislation. Correct laws also. And we see also a little bit more direct communication, direct answers from businesses for corruption. That they're seeing corruption started. I'm not telling small corruption, I'm meaning in legislation. That a legislation is created in a disadvantage of the businesses.
And benefiting just a small
part. I'm seeing again, which I have to stress out again, I see again banks who are going into, who have more than 3 insurance companies under their umbrella already, who are violating GDPR rules by communicating who has an account there, has a car bought, he can go for the insurance. These are violations. We need to be very careful of that one. We are not going to have our economy better if these big businesses are growing together and making this kind of a situation that the smaller companies cannot develop. A taxation in a company, the money for the company, the GDP, is organized by small and medium enterprises. They don't ask any tax leverages and they just pay their taxes every month. If we can have now, rather than 1,000 SMEs, we can have 1 million SMEs, the economy of Georgia will bloom unbelievable.
I read European Business Association's slogan behind you. It says doing business in Georgia will be the same as doing business in Europe. Do you still believe in that?
Absolutely. I will never stop believing in that one, because I still think that this is what is necessary. We need to have the legislation from Europe in Georgia to give trust to investors, to fellow businesses, to have a fair business to working with each other, and that Georgia can be better. I would like to say, when I arrived 25 years now ago, I arrived in Georgia. What I've learned in Georgia, what I missed in Europe, is the cleverage, the know-how. People here have ideas. which in Europe you don't see anymore. People with all crazy ideas for business plans and things like that, I was amazed. And they still have it here. We just need to make sure we can realize it, that there's a legislation that they also can develop here. On that part, let's discuss about startups. This is also something, this is not really the full business, yes, but there's a lot of startup companies in Georgia. Why they are running away? Why can we not create here the base that the startup company, rather to go to San Francisco or go to Europe, to Brussels, what is this? No, the startups, we want to be here. We want to be here, we want to grow from Georgia. This is what we need to do.
At least they have the chance to do so. But if this political isolation on a broader level, it develops. Right, because we haven't heard that these elections were free and fair. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen the West actually saying and congratulating GD. More so, we see President of Georgia filing, and I'm not dragging you into politics. No. I promise. But if this continues, do you think there will be this chance? Because we now hear from the U.S. Sanctioning of the officials. We now hear from the EU the possibility of stopping the visa liberalization regime. All those things. Do the businesses in Georgia understand what is at stake?
Absolutely. They know what is at stake. I would say from the political part, all the businesses, at least all our members, they fully agree with the statements that made by the EU ambassador Pavel. He's always making the best, correct statements. And on that part, like a person like the EU ambassador and the other EU member state ambassadors, they really care about Georgia. They are not here to interfere in Georgia. You clearly see that. They are actually took a step back, but they are still ready to engage with us, to help Georgia getting better. They're just on a waiting mode for the moment. How long this waiting mode goes, I don't know. But I know for sure that people are very caring about Georgia, which is still very important. And there is a way back to change all these things. How, I'm sorry, the politicians, and they have to figure this out, how to do that. That's not my job. I'm not getting paid for that. But they need to figure it out to turn back and that we can, on a normal base, communicate with all the embassies, with all the European partners, the American partners. There is a way there, and it's going to be taking maybe some extra time, some extra effort, but I've seen Georgia passing in the last 25 years to other situations already also. So I'm practically sure that Georgia is capable of doing it, and I still hope it.
How long will we have that window? And that's my last question, to improve the image of the country, for the West not thinking that Georgia is turning its back to the Euro-Atlantic integration, which has been its core purpose for so many years. And you know that this is a clear image of the country at this point from our strategic partners.
I will have to check in my glass ball for that.
Exactly, crystal ball, definitely.
It is so difficult. The only thing I would say, and I think everybody agrees on that one also, the further we wait, the more difficult it will be to get back on track. And this is important. I can say personally, as the president of the European Business Association, I'm here. I'm ready to go again with the legislation, to work on the recommendations from the EU, to work with government, with opposition. We as a business association, we are non-political. So we have to work with any government that is there, elected by the people. But we are also on a standstill. We have no communication.
Do you know
also
who is elected by people?
That is our thing. We do not decide. Okay, personally I went to vote and I'm proud I went to vote, but we as a business association, we need to work with any government. If it's now the current government, if it's the next government, is it a combination or something, we need. But we are also, because there is all this doubts are raised, we're on a standstill. So we're also not moving forward, which is very bad. We are here standing also ready, the same like the European embassies, I'm sure, like everybody. We're standing ready to continue and to work again very hard to make it better for the Georgian country in a whole, but for the Georgian people also, to make this economy strong.
Actually, you know, John, and thank you for your time, and that's my last comment. This is what EU ambassadors and all the diplomats used to say once about Georgia, that they have to be, you know, cautious, they have to make very balanced statements, but now they decided that it's not time for that. And the perfect example of this is a German ambassador who takes all these blows and who explains his very clear comments, because Georgia is on the crossroads, but this is a different crossroads now than it used to be even 25 years ago when you came to Georgia, because the question marks are different now. When do you think business will decide that it is time to be more clear on who do you want you to work with? Do you see the situation, the uncertainty? I mean, to be more specific, that, you know, global war party is a bad rhetoric for Georgia.
That's a very difficult question. I would say, yes, this rhetoric, let's put also this rhetoric a bit at election time. I know in the Belgium election also, there also were very bad rhetorics, although it doesn't get into the media in Europe. It's only in Georgia it gets blown out of proportion, these things. And that's again, we go to the first sentence, like elections are very bad for business. So let's first see how this can be solved, and let's correct this rhetoric. Belgium had elections in June. Also, we had elections, and I saw also some rhetoric at the elections. As soon as the elections was done, then democracy picks up. Then the parties are getting together, putting their programs together, which is also very important in Georgia. Here, nothing is happening. Like, they don't put a program test from, look, this is what we want to do in this legislation, this is what's going to be decided on, with which parties we work together, this is what we're going to decide on, and this we're going to implement. So we are not there yet for this to happen here in Georgia, but business cannot force that also. We need to follow. I also hear some statements from, yes, business needs to be more vocal. We are vocal. We tell it harms the business, but we as a business cannot tell who has to be in the government and who we have to communicate. Again, I cannot tell which government official will communicate or not communicate. It is the business that says we need to change legislation in favor of the business to make it better. So we are not the decision makers. We are here to work, we need to make it better for the population, but we need the support also from government, opposition, from all these parties who are in politics to think about us and help us also, that we can do our job.
And do you think that the government that has stopped Georgia from EU integration, and that's what EU says, do you think any configuration of that government could lead Georgia back on track to the European Union? Do you see that little chance there?
I've been too long in Georgia, so I became a Georgian dreamer already. So, and not Georgian dreamer, a Georgian dreamer. I became a dreamer also, a Georgian dreamer, that I say I still hope that Georgia will get back on track. We did it in these last 25 years, we did it multiple times. So I still hope that people will think and take priority now in the business sector, in the European business sector. And again, from making sure that doing business in Georgia will be the same as doing business in Europe. This is the only thing we want to work for, which is important.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Last Sunday, Business Week gathered businesses who tried to answer two main questions: how Georgia arrived at such a crisis in the streets of main cities of the country, and what could be the solution. Business community stood ready to express their voices openly live in a 3-hour show. Let me give you some quotes. The current situation has forced businesses to discuss topics that in general we don't devote much time to today. We're talking about the issue of how difficult the country's situation is and how aggressive our country has become towards each other, said Temur Chkonia, the founder of Coca-Cola Bottlers Georgia, in a special broadcast of the program Business Week. Temur Chkonia points out that the solution to the current situation is new elections, which should ease the situation and return the country to the path of development. He also states that the country's challenge today is that only one force believes it can govern the country and wants to remain in power indefinitely. Business people are different. Some are afraid to take a stance. They need to overcome this fear and make their position known, standing on the side where the truth is. There is a group of business people, as there is everywhere in the world, who adapt to the situation, taking what is beneficial for their well-being, which we do not like. If the energy and momentum of these last 10 days or more are subdued as some want, it is impossible that it will disappear and tomorrow will start a new life. This energy will last a long time. The current situation has forced the businesses to talk about issues that we generally don't spend much time on. Today, we are discussing the topic of how difficult the country's situation is and how aggressive our country has become towards each other. It is unimaginable when someone puts on a helmet to avoid being recognized and then hits Magachikladze, a journalist. When he twisted his arm, he almost broke her neck. I've seen it in movies and she was lucky to survive. The solution shouldn't only come from us, they also need to propose a solution. The idea that the number of people there should decrease and the protest should subside is not a solution. So what if those people left? We are still here. We don't like the situation that exists today, but we won't just sit in front of the TV every day. Just because someone is at work or at home doesn't mean we agree with the situation. They say economic growth will allow us to enter Europe. Economic growth is not the main argument. The main argument is the complex of obligations and justice that exists in Europe, and if we don't comply with that, no matter how rich we are, we can't enter. The solution is elections. New elections need to be scheduled. The only legitimate institution today is the president, and Salome Zurabishvili met with Trump, and we expect Trump to resolve the issues that are problematic for us. Having a different opinion doesn't mean you're a traitor to the country. We have different opinions, but all these opinions unite in the love of the country. What divides us is one-party rule and the desire to be permanent, the belief that only one part of society can govern the country and pursue Euro integration while the others cannot, and that the latter are traitors. If you are not my ally, it means you are against me. You know how our judiciary is. When we talk about the judiciary, we present it more positively than it actually is. The same goes for law enforcement. I often talk about how we have Soviet Georgians and a new generation, and these Soviet Georgians choose the future, and these people are completely uninterested in the European passport. They choose our future, said Temur Chkonia. The chairman of the supervisory board of the ICR Group, Kacha Khazaradze, emphasized during a special broadcast of the program Business Weekly that given the current situation in the country, business unity is crucial, as businesses can have a greater influence than the state. He stated that today the government is acting outside the framework of the constitution. According to Kacha Khazaradze, the only solution to the current situation is early elections, which society must strive to achieve. We have reached this point for one simple reason: the cohabitation of business and the state. I believe that business should be the first to hold the government accountable. I'm deeply troubled by the fact that the taxes we pay are used to provide bonuses to individuals who imprison our children, assault members of the media, and I feel immense anger. I don't know where the line will be when I can no longer control my emotions. What can we do? We must unite, of course. Business has tremendous power. We can bring the country to a halt. We must acknowledge that with the money we pay, they are beating our children. Those who remain silent must be addressed by the media. They should express their position. Silence is catastrophic. I want to know where that silence leads. This is the issue today. It has been said that some associations are silent. It's unclear what kind of business we are talking about. Business is a unity of values, but today our unity of values has nothing to do with money. Our government has stepped outside the constitution. The judiciary has turned into a notary service. I cannot find justice anywhere. What should I do? We must unite and establish justice that focuses on the future of our children. What is the solution? We must reach elections. How? By any means allowed. We must fight to the end and see it through. Said Kaha Khazaradze. We have returned to the lawlessness of the 1990s, stated Levan Karalashvili, executive director of the Georgian Reconstruction and Development Company during BMG-TV's program Business Weekly. According to him, illegal groups are roaming the country and the current government is taking us back to the 1990s, robbing our children of their future. When the show's host, Georgi Sakadze, asked whether the media might be underreporting these issues, Karalashvili responded that it is businesses, not the media, that are holding back. We still have the capacity to mobilize resources. By resources, I mean finances, people and networks. It is essential to direct these resources effectively as we approach the election, said Karalashvili. The executive director of the Georgian Reconstruction and Development Company also emphasized the need to create a fund to support independent media outlets and protesters who have been subjected to the regime's violence. The co-founder and managing partner of ACT, Tina Tinrukhadze, spoke on BMG-TV's special broadcast about the journey that has brought the country to its current state. Tina Rukhadze recalled an allegory. If you place a frog on a hot pan, it will immediately jump off, but if you put it on a cold pan and gradually increase the temperature, it will burn without even realizing it. This is exactly what happened to us, she said, the voice of Georgian business for European integration and against injustice on December 8 during the Business Weekly broadcast. Georgian business leaders gathered to express their positions on the ongoing events in the country. I'm here as a representative of business, but first I want to state my position as a citizen. I absolutely distance myself from the cruelty and deafness exhibited by the ruling party. Today I'm here to discuss how we got here and what the solutions might be. I will highlight three main factors. First, we arrived here because of hatred for the previous government. You know how this government came to power and how it was voted in through hatred for the former administration. But nothing positive can ever be built on hatred, and I deeply hope that we will not see yet another change driven by hatred. Second, I believe it was the position, expectation of a better future. The government enshrined in the constitution the clause that the path to the European Union is our choice. We had hope for a better future and there were signs of progress. And third, which I think is very significant, is non-conformity, which starts, in my view, with individual conformity. We remained silent on some issues, we turned a blind eye to others. This has led us to a situation akin to the frog on a cold pan, unable to feel the gradual burn. If you place it on a hot pan, it will jump off immediately, but on a cold one, it burns without realizing it, Rukhadze stated. As for the solution, Rukhadze believes it lies in a united voice from society. The solution is in the collective stance of the people, businesses, and all sectors of society. It is about making our voice heard by the government. I see no other way, said the co-founder and managing partner of ACT. Reminder, protests began after the ruling Georgian Dream government announced that they would not include the issue of opening negotiations with the European Union on the agenda until the end of 2028. Over the past 10 days, riot police have repeatedly dispersed protests using tear gas, pepper spray, and water cannons. Yesterday, on December the 7th, masked individuals attacked journalists, politicians, and activists. To date, around 400 activists have been arrested, and no law enforcement officers or attackers have faced criminal liability. Businessman Nika Gamkrelidze states that there is no simple solution to the current situation, and the priority now is to ensure that the voice of freedom-loving people is heard. In a special broadcast of Business Weekly, where business leaders discuss the factors behind the current crisis and potential solutions, Nicholas Gamkrelidze emphasized that the silence of society, including the business sector, has led to this situation. According to him, the only way forward is the release of all detainees and the announcement of new elections. Solidarity with all journalists and all affected citizens. There is no other way to describe this than brutality. For the past 10 days, we've been witnessing all this in the country's main square. How did we get here? There are many reasons, but one of the main ones is our silence as a business community. The rules of the game that have existed in this country for years, inherited from the Soviet era, the so-called Tsekhavikuri rules, have fostered individual conformity and tolerance of this environment. This comfort zone we've been living in, myself included, allows for success only through connections and access to decision makers in the government. That's how things have been done, but this system has a price and the country is paying it now. My greatest wish is to turn this page, but I see that we haven't done so yet. I hope this discussion will help us realize that for the country to move forward, we must turn this page and conduct business differently in a free and democratic Georgia. There's no simple way out. The only solution is to hear the voice of freedom-loving people standing outside. This means the unconditional release of all detainees and the scheduling of new fair elections where the country can choose the leadership it truly wants, Gamkrelidze stated. Beka Bekaya, managing partner of Nutrimax, said in a special program on BMG TV that the business should not become money makers. It will be possible to make money even if you become part of the system, because they make money in Russia too. Building a real business will become impossible, said Beka Bekaya while visiting BMG TV, where businesses have been discussing how the country got to the current situation and where the solution is. According to him, the solution to the current situation in the country is a compromise which requires courage and many courageous people. The main thing for a solution is probably the calming of the situation and consensus. For this, a certain group of people or one person must make some decision. How? Perhaps they might see some force to compromise. This force must include businessmen and society. Everyone must speak out. We need courageous people. We must find the courage in ourselves and bring it to the forefront, because all businesses will be left behind, said Beka Bekaya. Is the managing partner and director of Nutrimax noted, business is done by people, and the first question should be whether it is worth living in this country, and how the business is going is already secondary. We look at the footage of what is happening recently, hatred, fear. However, it is very good that many courageous people are taking to the streets here too. Courageous people are sitting in the studio. This is good. What brought us to this point? Probably because we were silent. The Soviet mentality is unfortunately still alive in us. We believe that someone will be above, and if we know our place, business will be untouchable. We have been accustomed to this over the past decades. Business has become the most easily suppressed and vulnerable group. It is ingrained in everyone that one should not raise one's voice and should not protest. One should not express one's civic position. The solution, in my opinion, is that first of all, we should all understand that if we do not all stand at some level today, we may lose everything. Even life in this country will become impossible. Young people work in our company, and everyone is thinking of leaving the country. They go to rallies, they fight, but they think that if nothing changes, we should run away. This is very depressing. I work with everyone and I tell them that we must all fight here to create a better environment, said Beka Bekaya. Let us sum up the week in economic trends and tendencies now. We'll meet next Sunday. Before that, watch and read BMG.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.